Hello, everyone. Welcome to our meeting on the proposal for a MUP on Golden Avenue connecting with Richmond Road to the Kitchissippi Station. Appreciate you taking your time out on this very warm evening. I'm Teresa Kavanaugh, City Councillor for Bay Ward. I may be new to many of you if you live just in that area that became part of Bay Ward. And just to let you know that there's a representative here from Jeff Leeper's office as well. Ben Inwood is here. It's right on the line. So it's good to have representation. I'm going to just give a land acknowledgement first before we get started. I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I would like to honor the land and the peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it over to Robin, who's project manager with our cycle infrastructure team, and he's been the lead on this proposal. Thanks, Robin. I'll pass it on to you, and you can introduce others.
Thank you, Councillor. I will share my screen. Can everyone see the first page of the presentation?
No, I can't see it.
Yeah, no.
Now?
Yep.
Good. Do we see the whole screen? Does it fill the whole screen?
Yes, it does.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking all of you for coming here tonight and taking of your time, and for your interest in the project. And at the same time, I do also want to mention that quite a few people have sent me messages, and my apologies if I haven't got back to you. If you have sent me a message, I'm just confirming I will get back to you. It may take a couple of days. Okay, so let's go. So the key plan, this is the location where the modifications are proposed, and you'll see that there's a little bit of change to the east of Golden, and there's some cycle tracks to the west, and there's the pathway on the north. But this is kind of to get people oriented. So we're talking about a new multi-use pathway between Dominion Avenue and Richmond Road, going through the Golden-Richmond intersection, and it is pending on final property agreements with Ottawa Community Housing. But we believe that there's not a problem with that. Changes to the intersection of Richmond and Golden is to create a crossing for the bikes for the new pathway, and it also will improve the pedestrian experience, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. As I said, unidirectional cycle tracks sort of beginning and ending on the west side of Golden. That is actually it's hoped in the future will connect to future bicycle lanes that will extend as far west as Cleary. At the same time, they would then connect to the cycle tracks that are being constructed by Stage 2 from Cleary to Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway to make it a long through route. And the shifting location of the eastbound bus stop, so that's the one that's on the edge of Byron Linear Park to east of Golden Avenue. And because of that shifting, there's some on-street parking on Richmond Road is shifted from east to west of Golden Avenue, and there's a loss of some parking on the north side west of Golden. So why are we doing this? So there's a number of reasons. It's not just it's not just to improve access to Kitchissippi O-Train Station, Westboro Beach, and the Ottawa River Pathway for people on bikes or foot. It's to encourage more people to walk and cycle to the rapid transit, and to reroute the crosstown bikeway number 2 to extend low-stress cycling corridor leading downtown. We'll talk more about that. I'm going to show a little outline of exactly where that is so that people understand it. And the reason for shifting the bus stop is to try to reduce delay for the passengers by having the buses actually stopping within the traffic. And this is something that OC Transpo is doing all across the city to improve its service. And the last one, enhance pedestrian safety and comfort by reducing crossing distances at Richmond and Golden. So the background of that is a program called Transportation Management Implementation Plan. This is a program that started quite a few years ago as a result of a decision to not widen Richmond Road. And that was basically, there was a plan to make Richmond Road 4 lanes of traffic coming through this area. And I believe there was a lot of consultation with the public, and the public opposed that happening. So what happened is that council agreed that we should try to fund alternative ways to travel. So to improve all other types of travel, walking, cycling, and also transit use. And a lot of things have been done over the years to help that. Small things like putting up more bike parking and shortcuts through neighborhoods for walking and stuff like that. However, it was thought that we would like to do something a little bit bigger than that. So this is part of that program. And that program funds projects to improve sustainable travel, transit, walking, and cycling along the Richmond Road corridor, and to decrease reliance on automobiles since the road wasn't widened. The official plan and the transportation master plan both have multiple policies that support sustainable transportation. And again, to decrease the use of single occupant vehicles for a multitude of reasons. And encouraging active transportation connections to rapid transit multimodal trips. So you will walk and then you'll take a train or a bus, or you'll bike and you'll park the bike and you'll use the transit. And so, I mean, this project is only 300 meters from Kitchissippi O train station. So hence, there's a lot of reasons why we want to do this. So what I'm showing here is the crosstown bikeway number 2. So this was identified back with the 2013 Ottawa Cycling Plan, and it's part of a network of bikeways. It's the one that's been built the most in the city. It currently reaches from Churchill Avenue to Saint Laurent Boulevard, and that is a route that if you ride a bicycle, you can take that bike almost the whole way, and it's sort of low stress conditions or AAA conditions, all ages and abilities, to use the route. And as part of the 2013 plan, you can see, I don't know if you can see my point, Churchill and Richmond right through the heart of Westboro Village. And since this bikeway concept is supposed to be so comfortable that you could let your child ride on it, and given all of the activities along that part of the route, it was thought we're never going to be putting cycle tracks in there. We'd have to take out all the parking along that, and it would be really challenging. So we came up with this idea to actually divert the bikeway so that it goes along the Scott Street corridor west of Churchill, and then it comes down very quiet side streets, turns onto a pathway, the pathway we build, and comes down to Richmond and Golden. And then the cyclists can go onto the Byron Linear Park from there, or they can go on Richmond Road, and it's the beginning of a cycle track on Richmond Road. And so that's a main reason for doing this, but as well as allowing people to get direct access to the new LRT station. So just to go through this, this is sort of a close-up of the actual where any changes are taking place. So the bus stop is currently over here. It's being relocated to here. And this way the buses don't have to stop. They don't have to wait to merge back into traffic. They can just go whenever. So That's one thing. The cycle tracks are where a separate space off the road where cyclists can go, and they're unidirectional. So if you're riding on Richmond Road eastbound, you go on along cycle track and enter the intersection, safely cross it at this new bicycle signal controlled cross ride. And so there are a number of intersection changes, but the biggest, well, I'll go to the next slide to show you that. But this one shows you basically where the multi-use pathway would run. So I'll just go to the next slide. We can zoom in and you can see a bit more detail about what I was speaking about. This is your bi-directional cross ride. And if people are coming up from Golden, they have the bike box that's already there. They can very easily turn around, make this turn to go up into the pathway. They don't have to go along Richmond anymore. And residents of 445 Richmond will have a fence separating them, and they will have a new concrete sidewalk, better than what's there now. The design actually makes the intersection smaller by building curb extensions into it. Like these are jutting out into what's now road space. So what that means is that people walking have got lots and lots more space when they're waiting to cross the road, or when they're walking, or even when they're just talking to a neighbor. And this is one of the advantages. And these are elements of protected intersection design, the new style of intersections that Ottawa's building across the city. So should the project go forward, this is our timelines. We have finalized approvals this year, and it would go to our infrastructure services branch for detailed design, the engineering and so on. And then the following year, construction. And that is assuming that there's available staff in the infrastructure services department. As I'm sure everyone knows, they're quite busy these days. Oh, there is the website. If you haven't seen it yet, and there's an online survey that can be filled out, and until June the 21st, we've got a number of weeks to discuss this. And the web address is there, and we will complete the project planning with consideration for comments received. And with that, I mean, that's all I have to say right now, but I'm sure you've got lots and lots of questions. So I'll stop the presentation now. So
Thank you, Robin. I see some questions in the chat, and so we can just pull those up. I don't know if you can see them or not.
I'm just going to.
Yeah, just the first question is, what about the residents of Tay Street and Dominion? I'm not sure, Catherine or Luc. Do you want to elaborate?
I'm on Tay Street. I'd like to elaborate.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Lorraine Tetro, and I happen to live in the townhouse that abuts this project. And I just want to show you the devastation that this pathway will cause in our neighborhood. So if you can see behind me, there's a lot of trees back there. All of that will be destroyed with this pathway. This neighborhood has very few trees because there's so much infill, and we're destroying the environment, period. For the length of what this pathway is going to be, I think the destruction of this environment is appalling. I'm not complaining because I live next door to what's being proposed. I'm complaining because the cost of this pathway does not justify the destruction of this environment. And also, I responded to the survey, and I'm not sure if anyone has seen it in the municipal government. There's a condo building on Dominion, which houses mostly senior citizens. We see them walking down Dominion, Tay Street. So basically my address is Tay Street, Dominion and Tay Street every single day walking to shoppers or whatever in the village. These people are on walkers with limited mobility. I'm a recreational biker, so I come across these spandex cyclists that are pretending they're cycling the Tour de France, basically, on our pathways, are going at 30 to 40K an hour. They will not stop at that sidewalk for these senior citizens coming from the Barclay condominium building. And someone is going to get hit and someone's going to get hurt. This is not the place for a cycling path to exit onto Dominion.
Okay, thank you.
And my name is Catherine Presso. We live just 2 doors down from Lorraine on Tay Street. We see the same pedestrian traffic down Tay and Dominion that she does. In addition to the many senior citizens, she's entirely correct, who are very slow and don't necessarily have good eyesight and all the rest that comes with it. There's children who walk home to and from school and take that pathway there, that sidewalk as well. And there's a lot of other pedestrians who are walking to the transitway or where have you. I echo what Lorraine said. We are very concerned that this is going to be very dangerous, and there will be injuries. And to further support Lorraine's comments, the trees in the back, also in the front, right where the path is supposed to come out, there are trees there as well right now. And also in the City of Ottawa building at the back, you recently built a bunch of raised gardens for the residents, which I see them enjoying every single day. Those will also be affected. So I agree with what she's saying. You're making it very dangerous for the residents and the passersby, and you're destroying the environment for something that, you know, people can easily use the Churchill bike path that you just built, which could be extended, or they could go down, you know, come around and use Berkeley. I don't understand why this is being proposed. I'm really not supporting it.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but with due respect to bikers, some are very responsible, but many are not. And we have grandchildren who come here and like to run along the sidewalk, and they're going to get hurt. They're going to get hurt by some biker who thinks he or she is more important than anything else.
Okay, thank you. I'll just allow Robin to respond to questions about the trees, first of all. Start with that. And I think we can stop sharing your screen just so we can see everyone, unless you need to bring up the map again.
I'm not too familiar with the software. Yes. Okay.
Great.
It's inevitable that some trees come down, and the city's policy is to replace each tree going down with 2 new ones. And they're not all coming down. It's only the ones that are impacted. So we don't actually know exactly which trees will go down until the engineering takes place. And so I did want to mention as well that the green spaces that they have are going to be improved in the back, that this project comes along with considerable improvements to the property itself, and all the planters will be repositioned and so on. And not all the trees are coming out, but I acknowledge that some would have to come out in order to make this happen.
Robin, sorry.
Okay, thank
Robin.
you. Well, I'm going to take people in order of the hands up. Okay, so next is Bob T.
Yes, thank you. I live in the Barclay condominium on Dominion, and I'm in favor of this being put in, but I think that there needs to be some very careful thought given to the concerns that have already been expressed about cyclists. I'm a cyclist myself, and I would hope that there would be some way that the coming through the fence onto Dominion would virtually stop cyclists and would discourage, if not prevent them, from going down the sidewalk past our building, where, as someone has already mentioned, we have a lot of seniors who use that sidewalk to go in and out, and some of whom have walkers and some even have wheelchairs. So I'm thinking of things like at the bottom of Churchill, where there are two opposing fences at different places, where cyclists are forced to essentially stop because they've got to go around a very sharp corner. Something like that would force cyclists to not go roaring through there, which we definitely don't want. And then there must be some other way that can force them to go down the east side of Dominion so that they're not on the sidewalk in front of the Barclay where there are a lot of pedestrians. Those are some of the things that we're concerned about here at the Barclay. We're also concerned a bit about the intersection at Golden and Richmond, because our experience now going over there is that very few cars fully respect red lights on Richmond. And it's a very dangerous corner in that sense. I don't know if there's a possibility of having red light non-stop cameras there to give people fines for going through, but that's another intersection where there could be some hazards. And I would imagine that there are proper traffic control and pedestrian control things that could happen that would reduce those dangers.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Robin, do you want to respond to the questions on the intersection sidewalk use?
Yeah, well, the sidewalk, I think very, very good points that you're making, Bob. And I'll mention one thing. I don't think that the stage 2 has determined exactly how Dominion and Berkeley are going to function, providing access to the station. I think it's still and so, but I do want to mention that cyclists could go along Tay instead of Dominion and then turn left on Berkeley, because the main route is actually, I foresee the majority of people will try to get onto the Scott Street alignment, and they don't have to do it by going north on Dominion. They can go across to Berkeley. And I think that people would probably prefer to do that. It's hard to say until it actually gets built. But because there'll be a ramp at the intersection where Dominion curves around and meets Berkeley, there already is a ramp that leads to the Scott Street pathway, and it's going to be widened. And I think that people would prefer to bike that way because they don't actually, if they're not going to the LRT station, this is part of the crosstown bikeway. People are going to be going 5-10 kilometers, right? So they're going to try and pick the routes that are the easiest and shortest. So I think that'll take away some of the riders. I don't think you'll have any spandex riders on the sidewalk. You may have like young men who haven't yet figured it out. But I do agree with you. We definitely need to do something to make sure that they don't ride in the sidewalk. I can't see exactly what it is. I'm sure that we can't put bollards into the sidewalk, because you need to have the sidewalk clear for winter clearance and so on. But there has to be some ways, and we will be working with traffic safety on that.
Well, Dominion is to be a one-way street southbound, I believe, once this is all finished.
Well, if it's a one-way southbound, I mean, then it's possible, depending on circumstances, to have a northbound contraflow lane for bicycles. That's the thing that can work quite well. It all depends on whether there's adequate width on the road. And see, the issue there might be parking on Dominion. If the parking was removed, there would be no problem at all. You definitely would have a contraflow bike lane. You'd have nobody on the sidewalk, but I'm pretty sure parking will not want to give up on the parking.
Well, I understand there's to be extra parking on the south end, west side of Dominion, angle parking, right where the sidewalk will come through.
Well, I'm not sure if it's confirmed or not. Well, I'm going to have to look into that to find out. Because if there's diagonal parking, then there's no room for a contraflow lane. It means that all the bicycles will have to head over to Berkeley, which might be the best thing. Oh, I need to follow up with stage 2 off state, find out what the latest planning is there. Did I answer all the questions or?
I'm gonna, there is a lot of questions in the chat, but since there's a lot of hands up, thank you. We'll move on. I'll go by hands up first, and because I suspect that there's a duplication there. Morgan?
Thank you. I have a few concerns. I live at 445 Richmond Road. I'm a low-income senior. The gardens, and they are gardens, are very important to us, as thank you, someone had mentioned earlier. Many of the seniors come from other countries, and they use that as their main food source to last them for the year. I'd also like to point out that today at Golden and Richmond, a car went through the red light and just about killed someone. This area has a lot of senior high rises and retired persons high rises. I'd like that also. I'd like that to be known to everyone. I also want to point out how outdated your maps are that you're using for this only pathway. If you take a look in front of the building, there's already a sidewalk there that goes to the back that would only have to be extended by a few yards. You'll also notice the heat today. This is the only place, not everyone in this building has air conditioning, including moi. So the only place I can go to cool off is where you want to put this pathway, which ends up being 10 yards, not even yards, 10 feet from the bedroom window of people. And this pathway is being used 24/7. This does not make any sense. It raises the blood pressure of the people in the building. It's just, there's so many other places. If you had an updated map, you would be able to see where the buildings already are.
Morgan, I appreciate your comments, but do you have a question?
Well, is this going to be considered? Because from what I'm hearing, it's more about where the bus stops than the really bad city planning that went into this walkway. Will it be removed and moved someplace else? Because this is not a good location for it. You're taking away green space from low-income seniors. You're taking away a cooling spot from low-income seniors.
Just so people know, there was consultation that with OCH and with the residents.
No, there wasn't. No one
yes,
came. They came here and they told us. They did not consult with us. They did not ask us. They showed up and told us.
Actually, they did made some changes based on residents' comments.
On comments, but they told us. They did not consult with us. This is like a treaty negotiation. If you pick up the phone and call us, that doesn't count as a consult. And there was no consulting with the people because the people in this building want their green space. And thank you for taking time to listen to me.
Yeah, but so people know, they moved the pathway where the residents wanted it rather than through the yard to the side. So just letting you know. Okay, thank you, Morgan.
We'll move to the front of the building too, just as easy. And it would save the taxpayers money because it's already paved there.
Thank you. Okay, next hand up is Diego.
Hi, Robin. I'm Dr. Garcia. I live at the north end of Dominion. Okay, so the first question, ask a question, not a comment. How are you going to link the path that you're proposing, which basically outs to the south end of Dominion Avenue, to the path on the north end of Dominion Avenue? Because then we have two entrances to path on Dominion if this project goes ahead. How do you connect those two?
Okay, I'll leave that for Rob.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that before. And so the concept of a contraflow bicycle lane on Dominion was discussed. The designers for the stage 2 station are well aware of this, and they will build an access from Dominion at where the Dominion takes the corner, at the north end where you live. There will be an access there for bikes, and there'll be another access where Dominion intersects with Berkeley. And I suspect that most cyclists will stay on the side street, they'll go to Berkeley, and they'll use the one that's at that corner
So
there.
you are asking the community to accept a multi-use pathway of 300 meters to basically bypass the corner that comes down Tay and Berkeley, because you said it's shorter and it's going to provide more efficiency, but then there is no plan to actually connect your path with what LRT is doing just 100 meters away. So you are asking us to remove the trees, go through the old troubles of community housing, all of it, to basically just create a little bit of a path, and there's no connection. That's number one. Number two, you already have a path that connects to the multi-use pathway in between two LRT stations, just behind on Richmond Road, 100 meters to the west, next to the Keck Manor. So there is already a connection that is part of the MUP and goes from Richmond to the multi-use pathway that goes all along the river, and it's literally in between two LRT stations. It's going to be exactly between two LRT stations. So there is no trees coming down in that area. There is no disturbance to the community. You don't have to change an intersection to, that is going to increase flow in this area. The path exists. All you have to do is do the improvement according to the current standards, but the path exists. Instead of, going through all of this, you have to understand there is a lot of resistance on a community that is united. We have an LRT station that, unfortunately, the contractor for LRT has not been responsible at all with the community. They have basically taken out every mature tree in the community. You tell me that
we're talking about
going to with two new trees. Realistically, those two new trees are going to be Charlie Brown trees that will never grow up. So my question is as part of your assessment, what's the connection between Richmond and the MUP at the river, only 100 meters away from here, taken into consideration for upgrades?
Okay, thank you for your question, Diego.
No, I have a lot more questions. I'm asking.
Well, you have to take your turn because we've got a lot of hands up. So I'm gonna limit you to just a couple of questions because otherwise we can't get to other people.
Okay.
So the pathway that's to the west is not very easily accessible. It's been there for a long time and not a lot of people are using it. This has a lot to do with in making it quality for a bicycle route. It's a long-term vision. This is part of the vision, so that more people will feel comfortable riding their bicycles. And there's not a lot of people who like to make that turn. So if you're riding on Richmond Road eastbound, or if you're riding eastbound on the Byron Linear Parkway, how do you get up there?
Because you don't have an
it's not
intersection.
easy to do. And this is actually introducing a signalized crossing of Richmond, so people will feel safe and will be safe crossing.
You can do a signalized crossing 100 meters to the west. People are not using it because you can see it. You don't know it's there. That's the only reason people don't use it. If you make it easy for use and you make the signalized intersection, people
cyclists
will use
may
it.
not use a pedestrian signal. It's not designed for, that's a pedestrian signal. It's against the Highway Traffic Act for bicycles to ride on that. Now,
you are going to change 4 corners in our intersection. You're going to completely change the intersection to add signals that you are going to need to add bicycle and bus signals. Why don't you do that 100 meters to the west? It's the same amount of work. You're introducing new signals. You are changing the bus lane. You are doing everything to make it easy for riders. The only reason.
Okay, thank you, Diego. That's our last question. We'll have an answer and then we're moving on. Robin, was there anything further to add?
Well, I'm not sure I've addressed everything, but I think the main point is that this is, first of all, I think it's not infeasible to put a signal to replace the existing pedestrian signal, but there are a lot of difficulties in where you place the signals. You can't have them too close to each other. And this is the logical location because people are also coming north on Golden who don't want to ride their bikes through the village. They may want to go to the river. And again, I do want to emphasize, Dr. Garcia, that they actually are not, most of the people, once this is built, are not going to be going to the river pathway because they're going to use this new bikeway that goes along Scott Street and Albert Street. They definitely will. If you went there this morning or the last couple of days, you'd see hundreds of new people riding there. And that's what we're tying into.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Andrew Douglas.
Thank you. I do not live near the path. I live downtown and I like to cycle. And I think the path shortcut is a great idea because coming east on Richmond Road, once you get to Golden, it's a cycle dead end. You have to enter heavy traffic with parked cars, which is the most dangerous cycling there is. I thought this meeting was more about the design of the plan rather than disputing the existence of the shortcut. I have a question on the bus stop. Is there provision to have a bus shelter when the bus stop moves? I have 3 questions, and that's the first one.
Yes, there is.
Great. Now, the width of the path through the shortcut is given as 3 meters. But given what I hear today, would it be feasible to change the width to perhaps be a little wider in some places, a little narrower in others, and save some trees?
That has not been considered, Mr. Douglas. Actually, because we have a standard width for the multi-use pathways, 3 meters of minimum width. And the reason for the 3 meters of width is to make it more comfortable for the sharing between pedestrians and cyclists. So what's been happening in the city and with the National Capital Commission is they've actually been widening the pathways to a higher standard. But I would say that we could investigate that to see if it could be narrowed to save some trees. However, I have my doubts that that's going to work, especially given that this is crosstown bike. I'm trying to imply that this is one of the very few actual routes in the whole city that's being developed by the city to move large numbers of people and to allow people who don't feel very comfortable on their bikes to travel through. So I would say we could look at that. It's actually an interesting suggestion that no one thought about, but we typically try to stick to the standard, and it's usually, if anything, we go wider than the 3.0 because we're getting so much use of these.
Okay. Can I ask one more question, or is my time up?
Yeah.
I think we'll move on, but I appreciate that you're asking that. You're asking me that question. I'm trying to get a lot of people in, and I appreciate it. So if you want to go back on the list, because there's also chat questions, and we only have so much time, and otherwise we'll have to have people write in. Thank you. Okay, Lorraine.
I just have a couple more comments to add to the previous comments I made. First of all, Diego, I completely agree with you. There is a multi-use pathway that is just by the keg. I walk there almost every day. A lot of people use it. That's all I'm going to say. And Churchill has a very well-developed cycling path that could easily, in my mind, be extended down to Scott Street, where at that point you have access to 2 LRT stations.
Okay.
And I challenge you to come and sit on my balcony where I sit at the elbow where Dominion meets Tay Street, and sit there for 5 hours, and your hair will rise up on your head when you see so many close calls with cars that just come around the corner so quickly, they don't pay attention. Any biker that will come off that pathway that will go on Tay Street, from what I hear, to go on to Berkeley will get smacked sideways, T-boned. That's all I have to say. It's a dangerous proposal. Just come here. I challenge the city to come here and sit and watch what goes on.
Thank you, Lorraine. I've got to get other people in, and I think you've got your time. This is your second time speaking, so I need to move on. Catherine and Luc.
Yep, good evening again. So yeah, I just echo what Lorraine just said, and Diego. This appears to be solely directed at speed bikers trying to get the speed everywhere. This is not that kind of that kind of street.
Is there a question? Are you?
Yes, there is a question. I'd just like
Okay.
to know if Robin ever came to Tay Street to see what it looks like, number one. And number
Okay.
two is I'd like
Robin,
to know.
have you come to Tay Street?
If I could,
I'll take your first question.
All right, then, if you want to go that way, that's fine.
Yes, we have been to Tay Street numerous times.
Is that you, or is that somebody from my team?
That's me.
Okay.
Personally, I don't have a team.
Yeah, I'd like to know when you are here so we could actually talk to you when you're here, but that's a different question. My second question is I'd like to know exactly where this path will come out onto Dominion Tay Street, because your plans really don't tell us exactly where that is. Because there's telephone boxes, there's electrical panels, there's all kinds of things there. Where exactly does it come out?
Around the location of those utilities, we haven't got that established yet. That will be established should the project go forward once we get into detailed design. And what will happen is it would move to a different department from the planning department to infrastructure services, and that it will be looked at in more detail at that point.
But there are three utilities there. There are three different boxes, and there's parking there.
How many parking spots will you be taking out?
Please let him answer the question. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think the intent will be to align the pathway with Tay Street as best as possible, but it's possible utilities may need to be relocated, and that's where the most of the trees would come out, is right at that point.
So Lorraine, it'll come out right in front of your driveway, is what he's just saying.
Well, there's trees behind us along the Ottawa community housing side. There's huge maple trees that are probably 30+ years old that are right in the middle of the design of this path that I can't see will have to stay there. So those will have to go.
Okay. All right. I'll move on to
This is
Michelle.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, hi. I live at 420 Berkeley, which is the building adjacent to 445 Richmond. So right next to where this multi-use pathway is proposed. I have a couple of questions. This has been approved, so we're just waiting. You're just waiting for final agreement to proceed?
This is a proposal.
It's a proposal.
Yeah, Robin can explain the process.
I just need to know that if it's a proposal and there's still a possibility that it won't go ahead.
I would say it is a proposal, yes.
Okay.
At this point.
All right. I'm echoing some of the other comments. You weren't able to identify which trees specifically, but there are trees along the property line closer to Richmond. So who will be able to tell us which trees are coming down and when?
What will happen is that if the project proceeds, it will pass to a different project manager who will be doing the engineering. And I can tell you the city forester has already been out, given some advice. So we know that some of those trees will have to come down, but they can't always say exactly which ones because the exact alignment is not quite determined yet. And in the next stage, when the actual engineering design takes place, the forester will again be involved and working with the engineer to determine that. But what we're showing now is pretty close to what is likely to happen. It's quite close. But of course, they would be attempting to avoid removal of as many trees as possible.
Just the proposal is quite specific and says up to 8 trees may be removed. So now it seems that it's not quite so specific.
We can't know until we actually get into the engineering. You can't predict exactly.
And just my final question, again, is echoing some of the comments that were already made. I know some of the comments related to cars and how cars don't respect the traffic lights. Coming out of the parking lot of this building here, 420 Berkeley, there are traffic lights north and south. Pedestrians don't follow the traffic lights. They cross through.
Michelle, is there a question here? Because we're limited on time. And
yeah, well,
all the time you're using means other people can't speak. Ask a question.
Okay. My question is, was there a detailed traffic analysis done? Because there is significant traffic on Richmond between Roosevelt and Golden.
You got your question out. Thank you.
So
yeah, the traffic, we have traffic operations staff that look at the traffic impacts. We also have the traffic signal designers who are aware of that. And we have traffic safety involved in this. So, I mean, I just want to make one comment going back to what I think Andrew mentioned and others, and what Morgan mentioned was that we can definitely, ask for a red light camera to try to deal with the red light running and that sort of thing. But I can't imagine that this design would make conditions worse for traffic at the intersection. It will make it safer because it's reducing the amount of space that motorists have. Unless you feel that it'll lead to erratic driving. But the point of the fact is that the intersection is being narrowed. For example, westbound cars will have only one lane to go through on. They will not be bypassing each other at speed when there's a westbound left turn. So we have done the basic traffic analysis, capacity analysis, and we do have some findings. We do know the traffic will be somewhat affected. Also northbound on Golden and along Richmond, but the traffic specialists tell us it's within acceptable levels.
Thank you.
The city has approved significant density on Roosevelt, and those buildings haven't been built, and it's already a challenge coming out of Berkeley onto Richmond or turning from Richmond onto Berkeley. And so I don't know where all these cars are going to go. That the city has approved this density. I don't know where all those cars are going to go.
Michelle. I'm moving on
when the road is narrowed.
If you haven't got a question,
well,
I'm moving on. Emily?
Maybe muted.
I think it was muted. I have Emily next.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I think we have two issues here, biking and walking. The way biking is going, it's going more motorized and increasing speed, and there are those other little operated machines that go whizzing around. If you are a biker, you will notice, or a walker, you will notice the speeds, and especially with so many electric bikes, they come up on you very quietly.
Yeah, is there a question, Emily?
Yes, I do have a question. May I get to it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. If you come along Scott Street and you go straight through to where the new station is, and as someone suggested, continue straight along on the south side of the LRT over to where Maple Lawn is in that direction, it would seem to me that if you came up there, that the load on the street would be significantly less than the congestion of Golden and Richmond. It's a very busy, dynamic street, as someone said, with a lot of elderly people. The other thing I wondered is I think you're alluding to the fact that you're going to take space away from Golden Manor. Is that correct?
Golden Manor has been consulted at great length. I mean, I wasn't part of that consultation, but they have been talking for 2 years about this. Unfortunately, I was not on the project during that time, but the OCH board is totally on board with this because they can see the advantages of it. I did want to make a quick comment. The other thing that you mentioned, Emily, the National Capital Commission has said that they are discouraging bicycles on the pathway that runs on the south side of the parkway. They want it to be for pedestrians only.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But Robin, couldn't that be widened to accommodate, there's enough room there to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists in that area? There is absolutely no building. Couldn't that be wide?
You're talking
as
about
I've said, the national
NCT do something.
I beg your pardon? What did you say? I didn't hear you. Counselor, I didn't hear what you said.
That's NCC.
Yeah, we don't have any control whatsoever. In fact, I'm not very pleased that they're banning or they're trying to discourage bicycles along that route, but they are.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to FEMI.
Yes, I have a question. Your map does not show our building, and parallel to that fence, there is an exit for cars parking in our parking lot. I didn't quite understand how this new intersection is going to be controlled. Will there continue to be lights right as you come out of our building? To regulate that you can get out and go either way?
Are you speaking about the intersection of Richmond and Golden?
No.
Well, it's Richmond, and what if Golden was going to go straight forward? It would be the path to our parking for our building.
You're talking about
it's
the
not
parking.
even on your map. It's like it doesn't exist. It's not on your map. So people enter and exit there, and they are controlled now by lights more or less. But I couldn't tell from your diagram, will that exit from the building continue to have some kind of lights to get in and out or whatever? Because it's not that easy.
I just want to confirm where you're talking about. I apologize.
I know, because it's not on your map.
I think there's a parking ramp beside the building.
It is on the map. In fact, there's 3 drawings of that intersection on what I showed.
Okay, well,
I don't quite understand.
You know where the Exchange building is?
Yes.
Okay, because there's Berkeley, and then Berkeley, then you just go down a block, and there is a path into our parking.
Are you sure you don't mean Richmond and Golden?
Richmond and Golden, as I say, Richmond and Golden. Richmond and Golden, you're talking about Byron Linear Park would be Richmond and Golden. I'm talking about cross over Richmond and go up the hill to where there is a parking lot for the building called the Exchange.
Yeah, so that traffic signal will remain. What will happen is on the west side of that traffic signal, bicycle signals will be added in both directions. But otherwise, it'll remain the same. The same signals will be there, but the intersection itself will not be quite as wide for cars. It'll be narrow for people walking.
In order to get out. Okay, just one other quick question. I'm a big fan of hoping to be of the LRT, and I generally walk down, Berkeley, Tay, and up Dominion. Am I going to be a welcome walker there in this new sort of streamlined path, which I understand is going to now be one way for cars? Or I'm a bit confused as to the flow of traffic Berkeley, Dominion, Tay. Like I'm just not sure from your description what's going where, when, and how safe I'm going to be walking to. I walk down there to get on the LRT. Well, to get the bus that takes me to the beginning of the LRT.
Are you walking on Berkeley Street northwards to Dominion Station?
Normally I go Tay, Dominion, and then you have to sort of go over a little makeshift bridge, and then you go up a ramp, that bit bridge that they've built, and that's where I go to get the bus that's going to get me to the beginning of the LRT.
Well, if you come out onto Tay from where you live, right, you've got a sidewalk. I've got a
sidewalk on Berkeley. There's no sidewalk.
Yeah, there's no sidewalk on Berkeley, but there's a sidewalk on Dominion. There's no change to that, except that the concern's been expressed by others that there'll be an intersection of a pathway at Dominion and Tay. There'll be a stop sign for bicycles there. And we need to do something to make sure the bicycles do not use the sidewalk. But I really suspect they won't be using that sidewalk. There'll be very, very few of them that will be inclined to do that. I'm almost certain of that. Did I answer your question?
Okay, no, there's one more thing I have to say. There's so much going on in our area right now, with, unknown, where are things going to be coming out? I haven't used certain paths because they get cut off because of the LRT. And it's hard for me to conceive of some of the things that you're talking about because we don't really know, but your plan seems to be well developed. I just feel my neighborhood is being, planned for some far time in the future for folks that have to live there now.
I'm not sure how to answer that, but I did mention before that the city is trying to get more sustainable transportation. They're trying to get more people to use foot, bicycle, and transit and maximize the investment in the LRT. So this is the kind of things that we have to do that. And I mean, the whole idea of the program, as I mentioned, was because Richmond Road itself was not widened to 4 lanes 10 years ago. That's why we're doing this. That it's the people can move on bicycles instead of driving. And we seek to do the best we can to protect safety of pedestrians, because pedestrians are the number one in terms of transportation in the city. They're the highest priority.
Thank you very much, Robin. And we'll move on to Cal. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, thanks, councillors. I'm Cal Hakala. I'm one of Robin's colleagues, and I just wanted to respond to a few questions that had come in earlier. So one thing had to do with the trees. Robin had mentioned that we don't quite know how many will be affected. It could be up to 8, and we're obviously try to minimize impact on trees when it gets to detailed design. But one thing you should be aware of is that the city's policy requires us to replace any tree removed with 2 new ones. So if we do have to remove a tree, we will replace them in the area, 2 for 1. Another thing I wanted to mention was there were some concerns earlier about the where the multi-use path ends at the sidewalk on Dominion, and trying to make sure that that is safe. So as Robin mentioned, we'll have a stop sign there. We'll have some pavement markings, and there's other things that we might look at as well to try to make that safer, to try to get people riding their bikes to slow down and yield to people walking on the sidewalk, and make sure sight lines are good. So that's something that we will look into. So that's a good comment. Then someone else had mentioned how they felt that this path would only be used by faster spandex riders. And although those people that type of rider might use the path, we also expect that the path is used by everybody. One of the points of the path is to try to increase bike use by people who maybe aren't so comfortable riding on roads, at least on major roads like Richmond Road. So to try to get people, children, people of all ages and abilities, using the bike facilities, being able to get to transit, get to the river pathway, get to the pathway on Scott Street. those people that might not normally ride. So that's part of what this pathway is trying to do, is to make it more comfortable for people like that as well. So if and when it goes ahead, then that would be something that you could look forward to, is having a more wider range of people using that path. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Thanks for answering the questions. Judy Lincoln is next from the Westboro Village BIA.
Thank you, Councillor. And yes, for those of you that don't know, I'm the Executive Director of the Westboro Village BIA, and our boundary is right at Golden. So all the commercial businesses along there are in our boundary. And I have more questions around the actual intersection design as this is going forward, rather than the actual path itself. And we've sent a lot of feedback in, just so everyone in the public knows. We've been sending feedback regularly to Robin and the councillors. And I think our question is just whether or not the traffic study can be shared that shows the need for the right-hand turn lane onto Golden, because that seems to be what's pushing the bus stop over. We recognize there's a lot of challenges with relocating bus stops in front of businesses, especially given how tight our sidewalks are and how busy the sidewalks are in front of the commercial businesses. So just sort of knowing what those traffic studies are, and if the usage for the bus stop could be shared, like how many stops, how many people are getting off and on. I know that OC Transport generally has that type of data available, just because we do have concerns with the bus stop being relocated. And we've also shared it with the Ottawa Farmers Market, because I think this will cut into the area they use a bit as well. So our questions are just around that and the safety, because it is a very, I think like every intersection in Westboro, it's a very busy intersection. There's a lot of moving parts at play, and our concern is really sort of with that bus stop getting relocated, and then when the buses stop and the traffic backing up through the intersection when the bus is stopped at the potential new location.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Yes, what I did was I contacted the traffic operations and asked them about the removal of the right turn lane, and they have done an analysis. I don't have a report, so I will get a report for you on that. And yes, I'm not sure what else to say. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of people in the bus, right? And there are a lot of people, giving them priority, and in being in the middle of the road, we kind of support that. And if people are using the bus, they don't have to wait as long. And so I sort of support it, but it's more of, this is what OC Transpo did. This is what OC Transpo's input to the design is. It's not actually part of the original project. It's just to improve transportation for anyone who's using sustainable transportation.
And it's not the bus up. We are firm supporters of busing into the neighborhood. There's not a lot of parking. And we know that a parking capacity study is currently underway. The counts were done the last week of April. So we're hoping to have those numbers soon too. It's more just when a bus bulb out is built, the impact to any future use of the right of way, like patios or things like that. And so we support sort of the bus stop staying on the other side of Golden. So just questions around how OC Transpo made that decision, I think, is our questions.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have anyone from OC Transpo with us tonight, Judy, but I will definitely follow up with that. And I'll get you some answers. And maybe that doesn't have to happen. Maybe the bus stop doesn't have to be relocated. I mean, this is not set in stone at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy, for your questions. Andrew, you had a few more questions.
I think I get one more kick at the cat. It's the design, question of design, and Callie is sort of led into it. On the north side of Richmond, the proposal is to have what I call a suicide bike lane. Bike lane heads west on the right-hand side of the street, of course, on the north side, and then disappears into heavy, high-speed traffic. My concern is that is bad design. You should not be enticing cyclists onto suicide routes. I realized later there will be a bicycle path all the way, from what I heard tonight. But I would like to know what basis, in terms of safety, is used to direct cyclists onto a busy, narrow street when they should be being directed only to the safe path going on the Byron Boulevard?
It's a good question, and I mean, this is a sort of a debatable issue of what is safe for cyclists to use and what isn't. So for myself and many other people, Richmond Road is not a death trap. You can still ride on it without bike lanes, but we're doing everything we can to make it more safe by adding them. And I would foresee in the future they will be there. Having said that, if a cyclist comes down south on this pathway, they come up to the traffic signal, they have the choice of using a cross ride that leads them directly onto either the quiet street at Golden's, relatively quiet, or to Byron, or they can take the Byron linear pathway. So I don't think it's actually encouraging or leading people onto a dangerous route. They still have the other options. And I mean, the main reason in a way that it's not easy to build facilities like this, and it may not be possible to actually add on a westbound cycle track at the same time because of the extreme cost. We need about, $10 to $30 million to get it done. But this will ultimately connect through. And as I mentioned earlier, it will connect through to good safe cycle tracks west of Cleary that's going to be built in just 1 or 2 years from now. So there's going to be a gap there. There's going to be a push to make it safer. But in the meantime, people will still have access to the Byron linear pathway.
Yeah. Thank you,
They'll
Andrew.
have better access. Sorry, they'll have better access because they've got their own signal and they've got their own space to cross the intersection.
If I may say, I use Byron. I use Richmond too, actually. I'm not afraid of it, but it is a little easier to go along Byron these days, especially with the LRT construction. So to a certain point, and then you can go into some side streets. So thank you for that.
Are we going to write them?
Pardon me?
No, that's okay. It's Catherine.
Pardon?
It's Catherine and Luke. I know you had muted us, but I unmuted us. I have 2 questions for you. One is for you, Councillor, and the other one is for Robin. The first one, Councillor, is that you have just started representing us. We are at the very eastern boundary of your ward. I wonder how much importance this discussion is to you, and whether it is actually a consultation or just how could I put it?
It's not a consultation because we're not allowed to make comments.
We're not allowed to make comments. We only have to make comments, and you cut off conversation when you don't like it. So I'd like to know about that. And for Robin, I'd just like to ask you one simple question. Do you value bicycling more than human life?
No, I value human life more than bicycling.
Well, then start showing it. And Councillor, I'd like your answer as well.
I think that's a ridiculous question. It implies that bikes are going to kill people. And I've been bicycling for 35 years.
And you muted me
human
again.
life, of course, human life is important. That's why we're trying to reduce people from using cars, which are the real killers.
Well, the
of both
reality,
pedestrians and cyclists.
The reality,
And
Councillor, is
that's
you
why
are
we
muting me because
more
you don't like my
infrastructure.
question. You don't like my question, so you mute me. So that is not
I
consultation.
didn't mute you.
Yes, you did.
Not on purpose.
Well, you did twice,
Well,
as
okay.
a matter of fact. So we are the only little street in your ward on the eastern side. Tay Street and Dominion are the very little streets at the end, and you don't care about them because the reality is that it's the west that you care about. So I am really very uncomfortable with your representation of our little street when you are not allowing us to have the conversations that we need to have. And
you're speaking right now. You're allowed to speak.
Yeah, I'm being allowed to speak finally. But the reality, Councillor, is that nobody knows. I mean, Robin, you said you've been here. It's unsafe. What you are proposing is unsafe. And Robin, if you came and sat here for 5 hours, like Lorraine suggested, you would see how many times there are dangers in this street right now. And, you know, the spandex bikers, they exist.
Yeah.
And they come through here. They're not all of them.
They won't use stop signs.
And they won't use stop signs. As a matter of fact, Councillor Leeper had a proposal to stop the automatic red lights because bicyclers don't seem to have to follow the rules that the rest of us do. So that is what our concern is. We have safety concerns about senior citizens. We have 5 grandchildren who come here and visit us and walk on our sidewalks, and who will be at risk with this bike lane because bicyclers will not stop when there's a stop sign. They will not stop when there's a red light. They won't stop, period.
Okay.
So you haven't spent any time here, Robin. You may visit, you may drive around the street and say, I've been to Tay Street, but you don't know what Tay Street is. You don't know what Dominion is. And
I
you
do
don't
know what it is
Berkeley.
because I live in the neighborhood.
Where do you live?
I've been there many times.
So I'm
So
going to
I
go
think
back to
that what
Mr.
you're
Douglas, who
saying is
thinks this is
very
a great
unfair.
idea, who doesn't live here.
I'm sorry, but this is not questions. This is.
No,
this
it's
is a-
not. But this is supposed to be consultation, isn't it?
Consultation is asking questions to get
No, it's not.
information.
It's
Not
also
just
hearing comments.
making
It's
you're
also hearing
making
comments.
opinions. If you think
Consultation
so-
is hearing comments. Counselor,
sorry.
you don't understand what consultation means if you think that comments are not consultation.
You're making statements because you're making assumptions.
I'm making
that's
statements
what
because I've heard
statements are.
facts.
If you ask questions, you'll get answers.
I
and
did
then you
ask
can
questions.
and you can excuse me, I'm talking now. And if you get a statement, well, how do we respond? We're just supposed to nod our head?
No,
Sorry.
I've asked questions
If you
and
ask
you've answered them.
questions and you don't agree with us, that's fine.
Well,
That's
and
fine.
you understand that. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that I did ask questions. I got answers somewhat because none of the answers we got were clear. I got answers somewhat, and I'm making comments, but you don't like my comments, so you're trying to cut me off. So that's fine.
I think
We'll
you
write
saw
in.
that.
I'll
I
write
never-
in.
I
to
did
the-
not cut you off.
Well, you did several times. Anyways,
No,
I-
Cal put it in chat that he did
we will.
by mistake, and I had not done it. So please, you're making
both
a
did
statement
our-
that's not actually correct.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
have, in fact,
Okay, can I
but
just-
yeah.
I
Thank
would
you.
sorry, I just want to say one thing before we get closed off here. There have been many, many serious concerns raised by a number of people tonight, including us, but others as well. And good suggestions about trying to make things safer, but everybody is concerned about the safety aspects. And I don't feel at all like that is being heard and taken into consideration. So I am very concerned. I'm just going to say that. There are significant serious concerns, and going down by the Keg Manor, as somebody else suggested, would alleviate a lot of the concerns for safety. There's less traffic, all the good points that were made, and it's really not much farther. I don't understand why that is not being considered.
As I mentioned, we can take a look at that, but I can't say anything very favorable about that option. I've already mentioned a number of reasons why it's not as good as the crossing that we're proposing.
Yeah, of course, because bicyclers
But
trump.
it's not even about that. It's about safety. There's concerns about the Golden and Richmond intersection being a lot busier that somebody raised, and that's quite right. There's concerns about the exit onto Dominion of the bikers, and we know they're not all going to stop at the stop sign. It's going to be a minority that do. You all know that. There's concerns about children, senior citizens, and general people walking, like somebody was saying, about their safety, all to have things be here instead of there. I don't understand why the city is putting its residents at risk the way you're proposing. I think it's abhorrent and it's very scary.
And I'm glad that this is being recorded because the first time there's an accident, I'm going to refer to this. That the safety concerns were raised by the city, but nobody listened. Good evening.
Thank you. Dan Laundry, I don't think we've heard from you before.
Hello. Yeah, I live in one of the condos that my bedroom actually backs onto the proposed pathway, and I'm like dozens and dozens of bedrooms do as well. So I'm concerned with the noise, and I'm just wondering how close will that pathway be to the fence, which is then close to my bedroom?
Yeah, it's quite close. I can't deny that. I mean, as soon as you cross over the property line, there's only so much space.
Right.
So
So
with
what
regard to
do
the
you intend
noise,
to do about the noise?
yeah, I don't, bicycles are usually pretty quiet. You'll get more people walking and talking, I suppose. But
I'm thinking of people using that pathway, say after a Blues Fest festival or a football game at Lansdowne Park or a hockey game. There'll be dozens and dozens of people. I'm sure they won't be speaking softly. Have you considered this?
well, I haven't considered events that are quite far away bringing traffic to this pathway, but I have heard for the other consultations that there's a security concern. So I would speak to that. And that security involves people also being bothered by people who are not supposed to be at the back of 445 Richmond and talking late at night
Yes.
and drinking and that sort of thing. So my answer to that is it'll be probably not as bad as it already is now. And here are the reasons. The first reason is that this multi-use pathway will not really provide access. It'll make people along it feel they'll be cut off from the 445 Richmond property, except for only one point, because there'll be a large fence separating them. And the second important point is that it'll be lit with lights that go down on the pathway, not into residents' windows and so on. And that sort of thing may encourage more legitimate travel along the pathway, but less loitering along it. So if I don't know if
Yeah,
that
well,
fully answers your concern, but
well, no, because we can hear people now at the Ottawa Community Building. When they're there speaking, we can hear them very well in our bedroom. So I would imagine when there are hordes of people after an event or even coming from the clock tower going down to the transitway, we will be able to hear them, and it'll be much more than exists at the present time. Do you have any estimate of the number? Like you're building this pathway, but do you have any estimate of the usage of the pathway in terms of numbers of people per evening or per special event?
well, we find that the largest amount of cycling is just the same as with car drivers. It's AM and PM peak hours. People are going places to get to work or to school. So I would, but in answer to your question, we don't
Oh
have
yeah,
a forecast of actual volumes. I would anticipate that there would be quite a few cyclists going through there. I mean, it's going to serve them probably more than pedestrians because it's part of a very long route. Whereas the pedestrian side of it is to give them a direct access to the local light rail. So I don't know if I don't really think the cyclists would make a lot of
Robin,
noise because they're quiet when they travel.
yeah, I'm not concerned with cyclists. It's people walking. Do you have any plans to address the noise? Say this goes ahead, like muffle the noise somehow?
No, there's
Like I
nothing
take
in the
it we will
plan.
be able to see the people. Well, do you think there should be, given the fact that there are probably 100 bedrooms overlooking that pathway? and people like to sleep with their windows open. Like it's like your place. How would you feel if a pathway went into your backyard? I'm sure you would be concerned.
Well, I have to be honest, I'm a cyclist and I'd like to have a pathway right next to me that I could use for travel.
Okay, but
Thank
I'm
you.
not concerned with
Serious.
cyclists
Okay,
at
Dan,
all.
I think you've raised some good points about absorbing noise. And if I'm not mistaken, that can be done somewhat with shrubbery and other things that can be done along the path. But these guys are the experts. I appreciate your comments. I think Diego wants to come back and speak. Thank you, Dan.
So I'm going to
Okay.
follow up on the question. My question is actually on the same question that I believe it was Andy about the suicide biking into opposite traffic. So if you come into Dominion, Berkeley, Tay, functionally, it should work as a one-way street. You enter to Dominion, you enter to Berkeley, come out Dominion, get out to Tay. And that's where LRT does when they're doing construction work. They actually direct the flow in just one way. So what you're telling me is that the outflow of your path on the south side of Dominion, connecting to the north side of Dominion for the path, is actually going to go against traffic with no plan or solution. So again, you're asking people that are not going to stop. The cyclists are not going to stop on that stop sign. They're going to come out onto what is effectively a blind corner where your neighbors over there, I've told you several times today, they witness close calls every day, and I have had close calls. I'm a cyclist, and people come to that turn at full speed in their vehicles, and you're basically asking them to come out of your path into opposing traffic. Is that the plan? Because you told me there's no plan with LRT. There is no coordination on this path with LRT. So have you actually thought that you are bringing people out, into opposing traffic?
Yeah, yes, I'm quite aware of that. I have had discussions with stage 2, but they haven't been finalized. So the question of a contraflow lane is one, but if we couldn't have a contraflow lane, then the cyclists will have to be directed onto Berkeley, which is another street, which is a local street. It's not a very busy street compared with most in the city. And the cyclists would not, I mean, the ideal thing would be to just put a pathway along the west side, continue the pathway along the west side of Dominion right up there. If you're concerned about the cyclist safety, that might be the best thing, but we're pretty sure that that would not be agreed to by residents. And then you'd have a sidewalk that was transformed into a multi-use pathway, sharing bikes and pedestrians, which is not ideal. It's better right now to have the cyclists on those local streets.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I use LRT, I use bicycle all the time. So I use these methods of transport, and I agree, anything that makes life easier should go ahead. But what you're telling me, this doesn't feel like a consultation. This feels like an information session about a decision that has been made. And right now, there's no coordination between NCC, LRT, which is part of the city, is controlled by the city, it's a contract with the city, and what you are proposing. So you have LRT that is part of the city plan, and there's no coordination. So what is the rush on moving this forward when you don't have the answer from LRT on what they plan to do? Why are we rushing this forward? That's my question. If you don't have a solution to what is going to happen 2 years down the line, why do we need to do this now?
Well, I'm saying that there is a solution. I mean, we don't have the perfect AAA facility connecting that short distance, but the fact is that both of these streets are very quiet local streets. They're not busy streets.
Quiet.
And the solution is for the bicycles to use Berkeley when they're northbound and to use Dominion when they're southbound.
I'm sorry,
With the
Robin, but these are not quiet streets, okay? If you have been here and you say you're a neighbor, I encourage you, go around on your bicycle, find a FedEx truck coming right in front of you, right? A Purolator truck. Find any car coming forward. It is not a safe street. And then you're saying about the option of making them go down Berkeley, so out of your new MUP path and going into Tay and down Berkeley. So what happens with the cars that are coming from Richmond
That don't have a stop sign.
that don't have a stop sign? So are you gonna put a light there? What are you gonna do at that intersection?
No, and that, and
Oh,
that's
excuse
the
me.
point where
Who's,
it's a
listen, it was Diego's turn and there
that's
was,
the work together.
It's our partners, okay? We're partners.
So
oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you. I just heard another voice. I thought it was
I
another.
appreciate you
Sorry about that.
trying to intervene. But the question is still, you don't have a coordinated solution. You're telling me you have thought about a contraflow lane, which is a valid option, but you have not agreed on it. You have thought about sending them to Dominion, but you have not agreed on it. So the city itself, the city controls LRT, the city controls what you are doing with the plan for transit. Okay, so it's one, you have one big umbrella, and you guys, your right hand is not talking to the left hand. So you're pushing a solution through that is not ready. And we have, when Leaper was the councilor on this side, now it's governor, every drawing we were shown said that we are going to have increased traffic because they are expecting to have PTC station be a drop off, drop on. And actually, we're going to lose all of the parking in between Dominion and Berkeley because they're going to put places for Kairos to go and idle while they wait for passengers to come on and off the train. So
It's not-
they are
it's,
expecting they are expecting the increased flow. Every time we ask about traffic, that's what they told us. Every time we ask about the direction of the street, we were told you are going to expect increased traffic because we're expecting cars to drop and pick up passengers in Kitchi
All
City
right.
Station.
And your
So
point
what are
is,
you
your point is that there's going to be more cars with the LRT and we should talk to them. Okay, got it. Thank you. Cal, did you have your hand up? I don't know if you had some answers to questions.
No, I think they've been answered, so I withdraw my hand.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay, well, we're wrapping up now. We scheduled this for an hour and a half, and I want to thank everyone for coming out. It's a very emotional issue because it's something that's
you're going to answer at a later
Diego,
time the
can you please turn off your mic?
from the chat? I'm asking if the questions that were asked on the chat will be answered at a later time.
Well, most of them were statements. I don't know. We can, yes, we can look through them.
Okay, thanks.
No, I haven't shut anyone down. I'm making sure that people get their questions answered. If I let people go on and on, other people wouldn't have gotten on. That's the truth. Now, this isn't my first meeting, okay? It's my first meeting with maybe because we're just meeting each other because I've been representing an area for 4 years. And I'm used to controversy. I'm used to concerns about cyclists. I live right near a bike path. And I've been dealing with it with the NCC. I work closely with them. And I work with residents who have concerns about intersections all the time. Nothing new there. But I do have trust in the fact that we're working towards making them better. And it's about encouraging more people to use bikes because we want it to be safer. If we hear about ways to make it safer, absolutely. We have to look at ways to do it. I appreciate it. And yeah, well, you can be disappointed. I'm not going to pretend that I agree with you all the time. It's just the fact that we have to get questions asked. We need to get ideas, and we did, and I appreciate that. So we're wrapping up, Femi. If you have anything further, please.
Well, I just wondered, we didn't get to hear anything from Ben Inwood from Kitchissippi Ward because that part of Berkeley is represented by somebody else.
He's not here to answer questions. He's here to take notes for the counselor.
Oh,
Yes,
I didn't realize that. I thought,
yeah, the questions are being answered by the staff.
And I will add that feel free to take any questions specific to Ward 15 and reach out to us by email, and we'd be happy to answer them through a separate correspondence with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So I thank you for coming out. You care about your neighborhood. I totally get that. And you want to make it as safe as possible. You're concerned this doesn't make it safe, then we need to look at that. And I appreciate your input, and I hope you have a good evening. Take care. And thank you again to Robin and his team, for Cal and for Ben for coming out, and to Barb for helping me out tonight. Take care.